Hey, what's up guys, this is TCG Sam here, and I recently got back from YCS Vancouver, where I made day 2 with Mannadium. So I wanted to quickly go over my list in this video, and just talk about some of the things regarding this list, like certain card choices, like mistakes in deck building, things like that. So if you guys enjoy this type of content, then be sure to let me know by leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. But with all that being said, let's just hop straight into it. So starting off with the main monsters, just 3 Visas Starfrost. Not much to really say about this. It's just the most pivotal card in the Mannadium deck. You're going to need it to make your fusions, your Scareclaw Light-Heart, and it's just an incredibly strong extender from hand. 3 copies of Mannadium Riumheart. This is pretty much one of your best starters and extenders. Helps you dodge cards like Book and Imperm, but also just gets your play starter, which is really nice. It's also a 1521 for the Vicious Astrolabe, which is very important. And then for the Mannadium tuners, just playing 3 copies of Meek. So Meek's just the best tuner, not much to really say about it. And then for this event, I chose to go with 2 Torrid, and this was one of the first mistakes, I guess, in deck building, or quote-unquote mistakes. I don't think it was necessarily wrong to play 2 Torrid, but I feel like 1 should have been sufficient, and the reason for that being is because Droll and Lockbird just wasn't that big of a factor for me in this tournament. I think out of like the 10 rounds I played, I got Drolled maybe 2 or 3 times out of all those rounds, and it just really never was a thing, essentially. So I think the way the meta's shifted right now, Droll just isn't that big of a card, and for that reason I think you can cut down this to 1. The reason I was playing 2 before is because when you draw a 1521 plus a Mannadium Tuner plus Visas Starfrost, you're actually able to play through Droll quite well. But the fact of the matter is, now that Droll isn't really a thing, you don't really want to necessarily see too many of the balls without searching them. And there were times, of course, where I did brick on these. So in the future, I probably cut this down to 1. And in hindsight, I probably should have just not respected Droll as much and played 1. But for this event, I did choose to still respect Droll. And I think was the biggest mistake in my deck building, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. But for the rest of the Mannadium engines, just 3 copies of Peaceful Planet Calarium. Just very standard, very good search spell for the deck. And then the next card was just 1 Abscission. So I've been on 1 Abscission for a while now, and it's always been okay. You can search it when you need it, and if you don't hard draw, it's not like you can't play the game. But the reason it was always at 1 was because of Droll and Lockbird. This card is one of the biggest candidates that loses to Droll and Lockbird, which I didn't like. So that's why I cut it down to 1 initially. But the thing is, like I mentioned, Droll just wasn't a thing this YCS. A lot of people were playing cards for Unchained where Droll just doesn't hit. So Droll was just a lot less common this format, at least at the YCS. So I probably should have just played 3. This is a very good extender and pretty good consistency piece, because even if you draw a hand like of a random monster in this, at least you're still able to get something, which is not perfect, but at least it gives you like something that's more than just like passing your turn, which I did have to do a couple of times, unfortunately. So it would up the consistency if I played more copies of this. But if Droll ever floats back, like, I'm pretty happy to cut this card down to 1. Like I said, it's a very good card, but it was just one of the candidates that lost to Droll the most, so that's why I was only on 1 before. Then just 1 reframing for the Mannadium engine, just key part of your end board. And then Rhoda, it's sort of like just a generic Mannadium card or a Scareclaw card. And I thought this was fine even despite Droll, because it got you to the 1521 body right away, whereas something like Terraforming or Abscission actually wouldn't be able to do that. So I thought Rhoda was okay for this tournament. For the Scareclaw engine, I ended up playing 3 Reichheart. I definitely don't regret it. I really like Reichheart as a card. It's just a great pseudo starter. It's a great extender because a lot of people do like to hit the Light-Heart with the cards like Imperm and Veiler. So if you hard draw this, like, you're fine. But also it's just a 1521, so it works well with the Mannadium tuners. And then just alone, it can put so much pressure on your opponent, because you can just go summon, search the Arrival. As soon as you link it off, even if they stop the link 1, you've already gotten yourself, it's already replaced itself with the Arrival. You get a free body onto the board for Synchro or link plays, which is just really strong. I definitely do think 3 Reichheart's correct. I really like that ratio. And then for the rest of the Scareclaw engine, I played 1 Arrival and 1 Reichphobia. So 1 Arrival, I definitely don't think you need more of this, even without a card like Droll. I don't think it's necessary for follow-up, just because it's just a pretty bad card to draw most of the time. So I feel like you don't really want to see more copies of this than you have to. Yes, it does suck when your Reichheart can't search, but you can still win games even when that happens. Now, Reichphobia, on the other hand, I think I could have played 2, but once again, I was trying my best to respect Droll, so I didn't want to play as that many cards that actually ended up losing to Droll, so I went with 1 Reichphobia only. But in the future, I probably try playing 2 since I am playing 2 Light-Heart Link 1s, just so you have a little bit of extra follow-up to be able to get a guaranteed 1521 body. Like, if you want, you could probably play the second copy of Arrival, but I feel like it's just a brick and I don't really want it in my deck. So I think 1 Arrival is okay, but you never play double Reichphobia. It's definitely not a terrible card to see if Droll just isn't a factor. And then next up for this event, I ended up playing 3 copies of Fenrir and 1 copy of Scareclaw Reichheart, so I did have to return the Fenrirs I borrowed. But for this event, I chose the Fenrir over the Hero Lives package for a couple of reasons. One, I just figured I'd be in a lot of just more grindy, simple game states, especially against decks like Unchained, which are very good at that. But also, I also still expected a lot of hand traps. So the reason I put in Fenrir is because I thought hand traps would just be more prevalent, and Fenrir was a lot better in those like simplified game states because it can do a lot on its own. And in practice, it was fine. I didn't see it too often, except for when I saw it way too much, and that was all I saw, which did kind of suck. That it wasn't Hero Lives in that case, since I couldn't combo with just the Fenrir alone. But in this case, like overall, I don't think that was what ultimately cost me my tournament. Aside from that, though, Fenrir and Scareclaw was pretty good all weekend. They played their roles, and Scareclaw, while it is also sort of a brick, it does have extra utility where you can like force stuff out, which is not bad. So yeah, would I play this again? I would have to consider it more, because without Droll and Lockbird and with Nib becoming more popular, I would probably consider the Hero Lives engine, since the Hero Lives engine plays pretty well into Nib, whereas the Fenrir package actually doesn't do that well because you have to put that extra Fenrir onto the board first. And then for the sort of non-engine, playing 1 copy of Call by the Graves, pretty standard. Hits hand traps, but also is very good going second against decks like Unchained as well. For this event, I chose the main deck 3 Crossout Designator, and this was probably the final mistake in deck building. Like I mentioned, I really just was respecting Droll. I thought people would still be on that card since it was so popular beforehand. And it turns out it wasn't. Crossout was still okay for the most part. I was able to cross out Ash, Imperm, a couple of books here and there. And it did come up a few times, and it was pretty good in those cases. But Crossout I found that a lot of times, like when I would set it, it just wasn't really doing that much. I didn't really get hit with too many books when going second. So Crossout just wasn't that great in the cases where my opponent didn't have a hand trap. So in the future, I definitely just consider siding this and playing more non-engine or more engine props in the main deck in this slot. But for the event, at least, I thought Crossout would be good because I thought people would still be on books. I thought they'd still be on Drolls. And I just thought that Crossout would be able to hit all those cards, most importantly, because they do hurt this deck quite a bit. Speaking of books, I ended up playing double Book of Moon and double Book of Eclipse. I still thought the books would be pretty good. And in practice, they were okay, but I didn't play against any Pearly or Kashtira, so they just ended up being sided out a lot, or I kept in like 1 copy of each for Crossout Designator or something, and it was only really good for me when going first. I think that's just because I didn't get paired up against those decks specifically, but yeah, these books are still pretty good, I think, in the format. I think they would still see play even with the popularity of Unchained. And then for the hand traps, I ended up playing 3 copies of Ash. I know this was a little weird because Ash was generally considered to be one of the least impactful hand traps. But to be honest, for this event, I wasn't really sure what people would play. I knew that YCS Sao Paulo or Brazil just happened like a week ago, and Unchained did win the event, so I could have guessed that more people would be on Unchained, but in practice, I only did play against 2 Unchained out of like the 10 rounds that I played, so I didn't even play against that many to begin with. But Ash Blossom is just generic, hits the most decks. I still wanted to respect decks like Branded because I thought those might still be decent, and I didn't want to get like Puppet Locked or something. But just in general, Ash is just the safest option, I felt. It also worked well with Fenrir because I could go Fenrir, search Scarecash, normal Ash, make the Baronne, and then go Scareclaw combo from there, which was okay, I suppose. Then I played 2 copies of Imperm, just 2 for space reasons. I did think this was a very good card, and I did want to play 3, but that put the deck at 42. I just decided it wasn't worth it, so I just went with 2 copies of it. And then 1 copy of Nib, 1 copy of Droll, just for Crossout. So yeah, I didn't think Droll was that good, even like before the Unchained meta hit. But I guess a lot of people were playing it, so I needed to put it in my deck for Crossout. But that's also the reason why like Droll's at 1, whereas like Ash is at 3 in the main deck. I just thought Ash was just a better card in most scenarios. So yeah, that's it for the main deck. 41 cards. Then moving on to the extra deck, 2 copies of Astrolabe. So Astrolabe is just incredibly strong. 2 pretty much was the perfect number. I never really needed 3, and not much really to say about this card. It's just an incredibly important combo piece and helps you OTK going second and break forwards. For this event, I chose to play 2 copies of Light-Heart. So Light-Heart I felt was pretty solid because there were times where the first one would be hand trapped, then if you have Visas in hand, you can just pop it, summon it, make another one, and just combo from there. I didn't play the second field spell like I mentioned because out of fear of draw. In the future, I think I will, so the second Light-Heart will actually get a lot of value in that case. But for this event at least, like, it was fine. It used to be an Ice Shade Jameer Adrian in this slot, but that didn't come up for me this event either, so in the end, like, this really could have been anything, and I still would have done the same as I did. So just 1 copy of Cross Sheep to use in your regular combos. And then I played Knightmare Unicorn, Accesscode Talker. There's a lot of discussion I've seen in like the Mannadium like groups about like whether or not you should play this. I definitely do think you need to play this. Not only is Unicorn non-destructive removal, which helps this deck out quite a bit, outing certain things, but also it bridges you up to Accesscode Talker, which is very important because it just helps you go for game under weird scenarios where your levels don't match up, or your opponent has deburied you, most importantly, or something like that, or even under a card like Shifter, it can still be okay just because it's really big. And it just came up for me quite a bit, helped me OTK a lot, and I definitely would not cut this for anything. I think these are very important in the deck just to help you beat those cards. And then 1 copy of Apollousa. Apollousa was fine, ended on it a few times. It's just an important part of your end board. And then for the Synchro monsters, 1 copy of Amritara, which is an important combo piece. Amritara is pretty solid, of course, helps you search the counter trap. I still played Accel Synchro Stardust Dragon. I think this isn't necessarily 100% necessary since not every combo line uses it, but at least for me, the way I play the deck, there are combo lines where you would have to end up going through this because you're trying to play around certain hand traps or whatnot, or just in very weird game states where you have very simply just like Riumheart plus like a Meek or something, and you really need to just make a play. Like this can at least get you Disc Powder or a Baronne, which is important. Definitely don't need Stardust. You don't summon it enough for Stardust to come up. And moving on to the 10s, 1 Baronne de Fleur, of course, is just the best generic level 10 out there. 1 copy of Disc Powder is used in a lot of your combos, and to go with it, we use Crimson Dragon. Crimson Dragon was just the integral part of the combo. I don't really love the card since it does force you to play a slot just essentially to summon out Disc Powder, but Disc Powder is so important to the combo that you just do need the Crimson Dragon. The last Synchro 10 I played Changing. This was honestly the MVP for me. It outed a lot of different things and was just generally a nuisance for opponents to out because there's quite a bit of banishing in the format, and you can, of course, since I was playing cards like Crossout, I could like sort of cheese a banish with Changing anytime I wanted, or more commonly I should say, you just use the reframing after you use it. You just banish it from the graveyard to shuffle some tuners back, and you can trigger this at any time. So just the non-targeting, non-destructive removal is very important. This played a very important role. It helped out cards like Borderland and stuff like that. Would definitely recommend playing it if you do choose to play this deck. No Chaos Angel. I didn't feel like it was really necessary. You can absolutely play it, but I just wanted to play other things in that slot. I don't think it's really necessary, and it's not really going to make a difference a lot of the time. Finally, I played 1 copy of Baguska, so this was just for when you get shifted or drolled. I never made it in the tournament, but in previous testing it came up a lot, so I still chose to play it. So that's it for the extra deck, and now just quickly onto the side deck. I chose to play 2 Gamseal for this event. This used to be Mind Control and Change of Heart. I changed it at the last minute at the venue. But Gamseal was, in theory, really good against the decks that like Mind Control was giving us, so things like Unchained and Dragon Link, for example. Functionally, it worked the same way because you were able to out the problematic monster. It was slightly worse, of course, in those matchups because you actually don't take the monster and the monster can have value. But it also had applications against Pearly, whereas Mind Control and Change of Heart did not. So I wanted to just put a little bit more respect on the Pearly deck. I never played against them in the end, but this did go in a few times, and it did win me a game against Unchained, which was nice. In the future, would I still continue to play these? I'm not really too sure. It depends how popular Pearly is. But I think that for this event, this was fine. Next up, 2 copies of Droll just to round out the 3 copies in the main deck. I still thought that Droll could hit a decent number of decks, so it's still worth playing. And then 2 copies of Nibiru just to round out the 1 copy in the deck. I think this is a pretty good hand trap. This format, especially against Unchained, even though like the better Unchained players can do stuff through it, a lot of times, like, just even good Unchained players will still just have a much weaker board even if you hit them with Nibiru's. So I feel like Nibiru's a pretty solid card and definitely should be at least in your side deck, if not in your main deck this format, just because of how popular the Unchained deck is. And next up, I played the Bystial engines, so 3 Magma and 1 Druiswurm. This doesn't necessarily hit the most decks out there, but for this event, my testing partner and I, we agreed that Bystials were incredibly high impact in the matchups that they did hit, so things like Dragon Link, for example. But at the same time, they were also just really strong against Unchained, we felt. Like, just being able to hit the Yama out of the grave can prevent them from making the Griffin lock, which is very important. Gets you a body on board that can crash with Griffin if you need to. Druiswurm was really good because it could out cards like DDD or the Griffin, and it trades really well into the Unchained board. We didn't really have the best answer to Unchained, and we didn't want to play a really targeted hate card like Mannadium Might or something. So we decided to go with just the Bystials. We thought it would hit a good number of decks. It was decent against Unchained. So we decided to put these in. They were okay. I didn't really get to side them in too much, but in theory, they were pretty good. And then just one more copy of each of the books, because I still thought the books would be good, especially going first and going second against like certain decks like Pearly and Cash, but once again, I just didn't play against them. I guess that was another oversight. I probably should have expected to play more Unchained than Pearly or Cash, but like maybe I just got unlucky with my pairings. I didn't run into them at all. And then finally for the back removal cards, 2 Storm and 1 Duster. So these were okay. I sided them in a few times. They can be really good against a lot of decks out there. I didn't choose to play evenly. Maybe that was a mistake. I decided sort of last minute to not play it, just to make space for more of the other non-engine cards like the Bystials. But maybe in practice I should have played evenly, just because I wasn't too sure how good it really was against Unchained. I didn't really get enough testing against Unchained, so I wasn't too sure how good evenly was. In hindsight, I think evenly would have been alright. I probably would have chose to play it if I had a little bit more testing against Unchained, but for the purposes of this event, it was okay. So that's going to do it for the deck profile. If you guys want to see the matchups I played, then be sure to stay tuned for my my YCS recap video. It's been a big project I've been working on for a while now. It's probably going to come out by the end of September, I hope. Just any time to like record everything and edit everything. But it's going to go over my entire journey of preparing for YCS Vancouver, and then my experience at the YCS itself, so like my matchups and stuff like that. For the purpose of the video, I did go 6-2 in day 1, and then unfortunately lost my round 9, so I was out of contention for top 32. But if you want to see the specific matchups, then once again, stay tuned for that. But with all that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.